My mom ruined my celebration dinner by yelling, "You're not taking that job across the country." I forbid it. When I told her I'd already accepted, she threw her plate at the wall. Minutes later, my cousin snorted, "Guess mommy still owns you." What they didn't know was, I've never been great at telling stories, especially the personal kind, but this one's been boiling inside me for years, and I think it's time I finally let it out. Maybe somebody out there will get it, maybe not. Either way, it's time. My name's Clay Norwood. I'm 38. No wife, no kids. Currently living in Seattle, but this mess starts back in a cramped little town called Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania. Population, nosy. It's one of those places where everyone knows what car you drive, what groceries you bought last Tuesday, and who you slept with in your senior year of high school, even if you didn't. I worked construction most of my life. I used to be one of those guys on site in the freezing cold at 6 a.m., coffee in one hand, wrench in the other, wondering if the rain would cancel the day's work. About 5 years ago, I made the shift into consulting. Less physical labor, more planning, more structure. That's always been my thing. I like knowing where every piece fits. Maybe it's a control thing. Maybe it's just comfort. I don't know. Anyway, the story really starts on an April evening, a Thursday. Cold, gray, that bone-deep chill you get in Western PA, even when it's technically spring. We were all crammed around my Aunt Deb's massive dining table, big enough to seat 10, though we were at 12 that night. The thing's been in the family since before I was born. Heavy oak, scarred from decades of elbows and spilled gravy and God knows what else. It was supposed to be a celebration. I'd accepted a job offer from a firm in Portland. Big opportunity. Better pay. A real chance to start over. I'd been playing caretaker, errand boy, family handyman for too long. This was me saying, I'm done. I'm choosing me for once. So I figured, maybe naively, that my family would be happy for me. That they'd cheer, maybe offer a toast, make a big deal out of it like they always do when someone graduates or gets engaged or buys a house. We were mid-lasagna when I decided to tell them. Cousin Dawson was mouthing off about some girl he'd met at the gym, said she was way out of his league but totally into him. Aunt Deb was venting about her HOA again, something about a letter she got for having garden gnomes. The usual chaos. My mom, though, Ramona, was unusually quiet. She sat 2 seats down from me, sipping wine like she was drinking to forget. I should have known something was brewing. I raised my glass, smiled, and said, "Hey, can I make a quick announcement?" Forks paused midair. A few heads turned. "I accepted a new job," I said. "I'm moving to Portland. I start in 3 weeks." At first, it was just a beat of silence. The kind where you think maybe they didn't hear you. Then some scattered reactions. "Wow, Clay. That's big," Aunt Deb said, eyebrows shooting up. Dawson made a low whistle. "Portland? As in Oregon? Damn, man. That's, like, the other side of the planet." And then my mom set her glass down with a sharp clink. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes went cold. Like switch flipping cold. "No," she said. I blinked. "What?" "You're not taking that job across the country," she said, voice low but shaking. I forbid it. The entire table froze. You could have heard a pin drop, or in our case, the slow drip of garlic butter from a forgotten knot onto the tablecloth. I laughed, awkwardly. "Mom, come on. I'm 38. You can't." I said no, she yelled, standing up so fast her chair screeched back. "You are not moving across the country. You're abandoning your family, Clay. What happens when something goes wrong? Who's going to fix the damn sink when it leaks again? Who's going to drive me to my appointments when I don't feel well?" My face was on fire. I could feel every eye watching us. I wanted to disappear. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "I'm not abandoning anyone. I've done more than my share." Before I could finish, she picked up her plate and threw it. Not just push it. She hurled it hard across the room. It shattered against the wall, lasagna and ceramic flying everywhere. Aunt Deb gasped. Someone swore under their breath. Then Dawson, good old Sis Dawson, leaned back in his chair and said, "Guess mommy still owns you, huh?" I wanted to crawl under the table. But here's the kicker. The part none of them knew. The thing that had been rotting inside me for the past 15 years. This job? This move? It wasn't just about career growth or new scenery. It was an escape. It was me finally cutting the cord after years of guilt and emotional blackmail. It was me finally saying, "I'm not your puppet anymore." Because when I was 23, I found out a secret. A big one. The kind that makes your stomach drop and your skin itch. The kind that makes you see someone you love in an entirely different light. And Ramona's freak out? It wasn't about a job. It wasn't even about me leaving. It was about what I knew. And the fact that if I left, I might finally be free enough to say it out loud. They didn't know that the job was more than a job. That for the past decade and a half, I'd been quietly suffocating under the weight of something I wasn't supposed to know. Something I wasn't supposed to see. I never told anyone. Not my friends. Not past girlfriends. Not even Dawson, who I used to be close with before he became a walking beer commercial. I buried it, like a crime scene no one ever found. And for years, I tried to do what was right. Be a good son. The responsible one. Fix things. Show up. Pay for stuff my mom conveniently forgot about. She always said she was proud of me, but in this weird, possessive way, like she was proud that she'd made me who I was. That she owned the rights to my accomplishments. That night, after the plate shattered and the room fell into this heavy, awkward silence, I stood up too. I've made my decision, I said, voice steady even though my heart was pounding. I'm going. And there's nothing you can do about it. My mom just stared at me. Her jaw clenched so tight I thought her teeth might crack. You're being selfish, she hissed. You know what this will do to the family? No, I said. What selfish is expecting me to put my entire life on hold just to keep patching up yours? That did it. She grabbed her wine glass and threw that too. It missed me by inches and exploded against the far wall. Aunt Deb screamed. Dawson laughed. I didn't even flinch. Instead, I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the envelope I'd been carrying around for years. The one I'd never dared to open in front of anyone. I laid it on the table. What's that? Dawson asked, eyebrow seek-head. I looked straight at my mother. You know exactly what it is. She went pale. Dead pale. And suddenly, everyone else at that table wasn't chewing or whispering or laughing. They were watching. My hands shook, but I didn't stop. This, I said, tapping the envelope, is the reason I'm leaving. This is the reason I should have left 15 years ago. Ramona didn't move. Not at first. Her eyes were locked on the envelope like it was radioactive. Like she thought if she stared hard enough, it might disappear. Dawson, always the loudmouth, leaned over and squinted at it. What is it? Some kind of legal crap. Aunt Deb was staring at my mother now, not me. Her eyes narrowed like she was doing the math in her head and didn't like the numbers she was getting. It's a letter, I said finally. From Dad. That shut everyone up. Even the ones who hadn't been paying full attention leaned in. He wrote it to me a few weeks before he died, I said. I found it in the garage, stuffed in a box of old receipts and manuals. It was addressed to me. Not her. Me. I looked at my mom again. Her hands were clenched on the table, knuckles white. She still hadn't said a word. I didn't read it right away, I went on. I didn't want to. I wasn't ready. But a few months after the funeral, I opened it. Aunt Deb said softly, Ramona? Nothing. I don't know what I expected, I said. Some cheesy goodbye? A life lesson? Maybe just a dumb joke. But what I got was the truth. Or at least his version of it. Dawson raised his eyebrows. What truth? I turned the envelope over in my hands. It was worn, yellowed at the corners, soft like it had been opened and closed too many times. My father didn't die in that accident by chance, I said. He didn't just fall asleep at the wheel. He didn't just go off the road. That's the story Mom told. That's the one we all heard. I could hear my own voice in the stillness, echoing off the walls. But in his letter, he said he thought someone was trying to hurt him. That he'd found something. Something about the company. About you, Mom. The moment those words left my mouth, Ramona flinched. Just slightly. Just enough for Aunt Deb to notice. What's he talking about? Deb asked, her voice tighter now. Still nothing from my mom. She looked like stone, like she'd aged 10 years in 5 minutes. I kept going. My voice didn't shake this time. Dad said he'd found some kind of financial mess. That something shady was going on with the company's books. He didn't spell it all out, but he said it traced back to someone close. He said he couldn't trust anyone except me. That's why he wrote the letter. Said if anything happened to him, I had to read it. I had to understand. Dawson sat back slowly, mouth half open. Wait, are you saying your mom had something to do with Uncle Darren's accident? I didn't answer him. I didn't have to. Ramona finally spoke. Just one word. Lies. It came out brittle. Like it physically hurt her to say it. He was paranoid, she went on. He was under stress, Clay. He hadn't been sleeping. He drank too much and saw things that weren't there. Aunt Deb looked at her like she'd never seen her before. But you never mentioned anything like that. Not once. Ramona's eyes darted around the room, looking for an exit that didn't exist. Because he was my husband. And I wasn't going to let his final weeks be remembered like that. You think it was easy watching him unravel? I shook my head. No. What's not easy is carrying a letter for 15 years wondering if it's a warning or a goodbye. What's not easy is pretending everything's normal when deep down you know something's rotten and no one else sees it. Silence again. You could practically feel the walls breathing. Why now? Deb finally asked. Why bring it up tonight? I looked right at her, then at everyone else. Because I'm leaving. And because I don't want to spend another decade pretending I don't know what I know. I'm not going to keep protecting someone who hasn't protected me back. I could see the tension winding tighter like an old spring. The dining room, once noisy with clinking cutlery and casual chatter, had dimmed into something ominous. Every word, every paused breath, hung in the air. Ramona's eyes finally met mine again. You think leaving will fix it all? She asked, tone almost weary. You think getting away from home is the magic solution? I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I'm not looking for magic, Mom. I'm looking for the truth. Freedom. I can't keep living a life constructed on lies. Aunt Deb shook her head slowly. Freedom? Clay, you're talking about breaking away from everything. Family, duty, history. Do you even understand what that means for all of us? I glanced at Aunt Deb, then back at Ramona. I understand more than you know. I spent 15 years carrying the weight of secrets, feeling trapped in a web woven by the people who were supposed to care about me. My dad trusted me enough to reveal those secrets, and I've been living with his words haunting me ever since. Dawson, who had been silent ever since his dismissive comment earlier, leaned forward, his face an unusual mix of curiosity and concern. So what are you going to do, Clay? Just up and leave? How do you plan on taking on all of this on your own? I let a brief pause stretch out between us. It's not just about leaving. It's about making things right for me, even if it means facing the past head-on. I have to understand exactly what Dad meant. I have to know if we were all played, if the world we lived in was nothing but a carefully constructed illusion to hide someone's greed. Ramona's eyes darted away, her face flushing with emotions I hadn't seen in years. Guilt, anger, fear. That letter was meant to protect you, she said, voice softening almost imperceptibly. I was trying to keep everything together. I never meant for any of this to tear us apart. I shook my head, feeling a mix of sorrow and resolve. Protect me? You never protected me from all the secrets, Mom. You protected your own comfort, even if it meant sacrificing the truth. I can't do that anymore. Aunt Deb's voice softened. Clay, sometimes the truth isn't as clear-cut as we'd like it to be. Your father was a complicated man, and maybe his demons made him see enemies where there were none. Maybe that's exactly it, I interrupted, looking at her sharply. Maybe all our lives have been tangled in a narrative crafted to shield us from a darkness that was right in our midst. And maybe I have to step into that darkness to finally see the light. The room grew silent again, heavy with unsaid words. Dawson's eyes seemed to search my face for some hidden confession, while Ramona appeared to be wrestling with memories and regrets too painful to name. Tell me, Ramona asked, barely above a whisper. What if you're wrong? What if this journey only brings more pain, more secrets that you're not ready to handle? I met her gaze, my voice low but firm. I've already borne the weight of this family's lies for too long, Mom. I need to know the truth about Dad's final weeks, about his suspicions and what he meant when he said that things were not as they seemed. I need to decide for myself what's real and what isn't. Aunt Deb sighed heavily, glancing at Dawson. So where does this leave all of us then? Are we just supposed to wait until you drop another beam shell? I paused, gathering my thoughts. I wish it were that simple, I admitted. But I'm not the only one tangled in this mess. I know some of you have kept your own secrets. There are pieces of our family history that have been buried too deep. I'm taking off to find those pieces, to follow the clues Dad left behind. I need to see if there's any truth behind his words, or if it was just his paranoia fueled by a life of misery. Dawson finally spoke up, more softly now, though there was a hint of amusement in his eyes. And you think, once you have all the answers, everything will be different? That our problems will vanish? I shook my head slowly. No. I don't expect things to fix themselves magically. But I need to make sense of it. I need to know if your stories, Mom, the ones I grew up believing, are just convenient fabrications to hide uncomfortable truths. And I'm willing to face whatever comes up, even if that means betraying someone I love or shattering more illusions. Ramona's voice faltered. You really believe you can change things? Her tone seemed laden with decades of regret. Not change exactly, I said softly. Just understand them. Only then can I decide what to do next. I know this isn't going to be easy for any of us, but I can't keep living a life on autopilot, pretending that everything is fine when it clearly isn't. The silence that followed was thick as molasses. Eyes flickered between us, each person processing the raw, exposed truth. Finally, Aunt Deb broke the stillness. So where do you start? I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the enormity of the task ahead. I start by revisiting everything Dad left behind. I dig into those old records, old accounts, whatever it takes. I've already made arrangements to meet someone who knew him well, someone who might have some insights into the financial mess he mentioned. Someone who might help me connect the dots. A collective murmur of uncertainty and apprehension filled the room. Dawson shook his head, a mix of disbelief and something that looked like reluctant admiration on his face. Ramona's eyes glistened with tears she wouldn't let fall, and even Aunt Deb seemed to slump further, weighed down by the realization that our family's history was far more complicated than we'd ever imagined. "Maybe you're right, Clay," Aunt Deb said quietly. "Maybe it's time someone actually asked the questions instead of shoving everything under the rug." I nodded slowly, absorbing her words. "I'm not expecting an easy ride. I know that. But I can't sleep at night knowing that Dad's last words have haunted me for all these years. I can't keep pretending that the past isn't bleeding into the present." The air around us felt charged, like the calm before a storm that promised to upheave everything we thought we knew about our family. And as I stared down at that weathered envelope, a symbol of both retribution and the cold, unyielding truth, I realized that this was just the beginning. I had made my decision not merely to leave home, but to confront the ghosts that had shadowed me since youth. I was ready to peel back the layers, no matter how painful the truth might be. I left Wilkinsburg 2 days after the dinner. I didn't tell anyone when I was leaving. I just packed my truck, loaded up everything I need for the drive to Portland, and drove off while the town was still asleep. No goodbye breakfast. No emotional send-off. Just a quiet exit like I always knew it had to be. The letter sat on the passenger seat the whole way. I kept going over Dad's words in my head. Every line, every warning. He hadn't been specific, but he was careful. He mentioned a name, someone from his company he'd once trusted, someone who started acting strange toward the end. A man named Carter Bledsoe. The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. When I got to Portland, I didn't start the new job right away. It took a week. Set up my place, found a decent coffee shop, then started digging. I found an old contact of Dad's, a retired accountant who used to do freelance work for the company. His name was Hank Elwood. We met at a diner just outside the city. Hank looked like the kind of guy who'd seen too much and said too little. I brought the letter, didn't tell him what it said, just asked if he remembered Dad. When I mentioned the name Carter Bledsoe, he stiffened. "He's the one who took over after your dad died," Hank said. "Real slick type. Had the board wrapped around his finger. Lot of people got pushed out. Hell, I was one of them." He stirred his coffee slowly. "Your old man wasn't crazy. He was on to something. Money was going missing. Investments that didn't exist. Loans made to fake vendors. When I started asking questions, I got blacklisted. Never worked again." My stomach turned. So he was right. Hank nodded. "I don't know how far it went. But your dad didn't die without reason. Someone wanted him out of the way. That week, I made it my job to find everything. I filed requests, found old financial records, cross-checked vendor names with business licenses. And slowly, it all came together. Shell companies. Redirected payments. Expense reports that made no sense. I hired a lawyer. Not a big firm. Just a guy named Wesley Mott, sharp as a tack and petty enough to enjoy taking people down. I gave him everything. The records. The letter. Hank's testimony. Names. Dates. Paper trails. It took 8 months. During that time, I started the job. Made friends. Built a little life. But behind the scenes, we were assembling a case. Quietly. Thoroughly. Then came the day we filed. The lawsuit didn't just name Carter Bledsoe. It named the company, the board, the fake vendors, and though she wasn't mentioned directly, my mother's name came up in the internal emails we uncovered. She had known. Maybe not the full scope, but enough. Enough to stay silent. Enough to benefit. The company tried to settle. We said no. When the case went public, it blew up. The local paper ran the story. Whistleblower's son exposes decade-long corporate fraud. Hank was quoted. My dad was vindicated. And I became the name no one at that company wanted to say out loud. A few weeks later, I got a letter. No return address. It was from Ramona. Just 1 page. I never thought it would come to this. I did what I thought was best. You'll never understand the choices I had to make. She was right. I didn't understand. But I was done trying to. That was 2 years ago. I still live in Portland. Still working, still walking past that same coffee shop every morning. Hank sends me postcards sometimes. Wesley and I grab drinks now and then. Sometimes I think about home. About Wilkinsburg. I think about how silence can rot a family from the inside out. But I don't regret anything. Because the truth came out. Dad's name was cleared. The fraudsters paid. And Ramona, well, she lost the one thing she always clung to: control. And me? I finally got my life back. I still remember the day Ramona's world began to publicly unravel. It wasn't a courtroom or some dramatic television trial. It was subtler, slower, and somehow more satisfying. The kind of revenge that doesn't scream, it whispers. And everyone hears it. The local paper ran a follow-up story, whistleblower's mother implicated in company as seen Dow. They didn't outright say she was guilty, but they quoted the emails, the financial connections, the board meeting transcripts. Enough to taint her spotless community reputation. She used to walk through Wilkinsburg like a queen. Church committee leader. Neighborhood fundraiser chair. The woman who sacrificed everything for her son. But after the article, people started crossing the street to avoid her. The calls stopped. She wasn't asked to bake for events. Invitations dried up. She sold the house a few months later. Moved into a 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. No more big garden. No more monthly charity brunches. Just silence and the weight of what she'd tried to keep buried. She sent me another letter. This one was longer. She apologized, sort of. Said she regretted the way things played out. Said she never meant to hurt me. Said she was scared. I didn't write back. I didn't need to. My father's name was cleared. The truth was out. The company paid out a hefty settlement and restructured under government watch. Bledsoe was forced to resign. And Ramona? She got to live with the consequences. Not behind bars, but in a place far worse for someone like her: anonymity. Obscurity. The woman who always needed control lost the one thing she truly valued: her image. And me? I wake up every morning, make my own coffee, walk to work, and answer to no one. That's the kind of revenge I never imagined, but it's the one that healed me.